Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Tanya Scott. Tanya is a writer, doctor, and medical educator based on the Victorian Surf Coast. She's been writing for many years, including using narrative therapy as a tool to make sense of the world, both personally and with her patients. Many of the ideas for Stillwater stem from her work helping patients with childhood trauma, acknowledging that in reality, recovery is a long and incomplete path. Welcome, Tanya.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We were talking about the two covers of Stillwater because she's got the Australian cover in front of her, which is gorgeous, but they're so different. So if you're only listening to us, go check out the US cover because I think it's super fun. They've done a really fabulous job. I love the tones of pink and orange and red. But she's saying that it clashes a bit with the Australian one. So
It does clash, yes.
don't put them
It's
too close
classic.
together.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is the pink and yellow is very 2025. There's lots of books out at the
Yes.
moment. Look, and the yellow and hot pink it's a vibe.
Isn't
Yeah.
that so? And you can kind of tell when books have come out, kind of based on there's like color palettes that come and go. It's so true. Well, before we
Yeah.
dig into all the fun stuff about Stillwater, can you tell us about the book, please?
Sure. So Stillwater is a crime thriller. It's about Luke, who's a young man who's recently returned to his home city of Melbourne after several years running away from his troubled early life and his chaotic father. He's keeping a low profile, but he's broke, his car's dying, his university exams are hanging over his head. And Luke's quiet life is thrown into turmoil when Gus Alberici, who's the criminal he worked for as a teenager, tracks him down and wants him back on the job. And Gus is not the kind of bloke who takes no for an answer. So Luke is roped into a hunt for his estranged father, who's vanished along with a chunk of Gus's cash. And in the meantime, Luke's navigating a new relationship with a flamboyant actor, and he's pulled into her family dysfunction as well. And all this time, he's grappling with people and events from a past he'd much rather leave behind him. And he's holding on tight to secrets that just might get him killed. So Stillwater's a story about a reluctant criminal. It's about not allowing your past to define you, and learning to be the still water when the sea around you is churning.
I love that. I love that. And Stillwater is the name of a place in the story, which I also love. I love when the title ties into it ties into the book. So yeah, so tell us, you mentioned sort of that this book emerged from, well, first of all, tell us about your medical degree, because it sounds like you deal with, are you a psychiatrist?
No, so my background is in general practice, which I get family as a family physician, primary care physician, I think is what you would normally call
Do,
it.
yep.
Yep. So in Australia's GPs, and so GPs are like the real foundation of the health system. So in Australia, patients are unreferred and they come in sort of unreferred, untriaged to general practice. And for a lot of GPs in Australia develop their own little niche areas. So, for example, we'll have women's health GPs or mental health GPs, or people who do a lot of sort of skin stuff like dermatology and skin cancer and that sort of thing. So it's quite common to have this sort of extra training in what we call focused psychological strategies. So I've done quite a lot of counselling and training in counselling, and worked with a mental health service, which was more of a referral level at that point, but not a psychiatrist, no. And so in Australia, it's probably a little bit different over there. You need to see a GP to get a referral to go and see a subspecialist.
Got it.
And the psychiatry is often very much limited to those, so really quite serious mental illness, and it's very stretched, so it's quite hard to get in to see a psychiatrist.
Yes. Some
And
similarities for sure.
yeah. Yeah, and so what we find is that a lot of patients who have that kind of what might not be diagnosable mental illness, but struggling, so
Yeah.
psychological distress, emotional distress, grief,
Yeah.
a lot of that is managed by GPs. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so this story, so this is your debut novel, which we also
yeah,
discussed a little bit before we got online,
yeah,
which is so exciting. Congratulations. There's nothing quite like, it's like a first baby, it's just,
yeah, that's right.
so I'm always curious to know the process, like how, so tell us a little bit about, at what point, I mean, you obviously have a, very full life with a career. So it's not like you were like, needing to find something else to do. So yeah, when did you decide you wanted to write a book, and how did it happen for you?
So I've been writing forever. So ever
Yes.
since
Yes.
school. So I've always been writing, and it's interesting. I think when you finish high school, the pressure's on to get a real job, isn't it? So really, if the planets had aligned differently when I was finishing high school, I probably would have studied creative writing back then.
Yeah.
But where I grew up, I didn't know anyone who was a writer. It wasn't
Yeah.
something that I could see as a career. I considered studying journalism.
Yeah.
Um, but interestingly, journalism is very, very difficult to get into.
Yeah,
It's,
I mean, I think that's true. It's
it's
funny.
not,
I applied to med school because same
yeah,
thing. I mean, my parents would have never accepted the idea that I wanted to be a writer. That was like not going to be a thing. So I spent 10 years in finance instead, because of some circumstances around med school. But
yeah,
yeah, no, I understand exactly why you ended up not becoming a writer right away.
yeah. Yeah, I actually first started in engineering. So because I'd done maths and science subjects in my final years of high school, and did okay with them, and so the obvious thing was you got really good marks in physics, you should be an engineer. I was like, okay. I lasted about 3 weeks in engineering
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
Literally. So there were 400 first year students in engineering, and I think 17 were female.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So some might think that was a good thing, but not
no,
with this cohort.
no.
No,
Yeah,
I did not belong. I've never felt more of a fish out of water.
yeah,
Um,
but yeah,
yeah, 10 subjects to do, and I think seven of them were maths.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
That was,
so
yeah.
yeah, so I quit, and I then was a little bit at a loose end, and I worked in a bank for a while, and did a couple of different jobs. So I worked in hospitality and as a bank teller, counting cash. There's pros and cons. And and then after that, reapplied to go to medical school, and and so that was much more of a place where I felt comfortable, to be honest. So medical school is probably, it's quite 50-50 gender split, and a
Yeah,
lot more humanistic
yeah,
than doing maths all day.
yeah, yeah. So, so you've been writing, so is this your first
Yeah.
full-length novel then that you've written, or have you written before that you didn't
Yeah.
pursue or didn't get published, or,
I've,
what?
I've written, yeah, I've written quite a bit that I haven't finished. So I've got probably four or five, 60 to 70% complete novels. One of them's an epic fantasy, which is very derivative and will stay in the bottom drawer forever. But
Yes,
very,
I have bottom drawer books too, for sure.
but I think you do need that little training ground. You need to explore voice and what you're trying to write. And I'm a little bit scattered in my reading material. I'm someone who
Yeah,
reads really broadly across genres. I really love fantasy and science fiction, and love good literary fiction. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
a
me too. Yeah.
beautiful sentence, and um, but it's funny, isn't it, how you then gravitate to a certain thing. And I felt that much as I love the character development in novels, I also like them to clip along a little bit and get on with
Yes.
the story.
Yeah.
So you realize what you've written ends up on the crime thriller shelf.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
know. I didn't intend to write my first book as a crime book either. And then somebody
Mm.
died like on page 5, and I was like, oh, well, that's,
Oh yeah.
it is
Yeah.
what it is, I guess. But
Yeah.
there is something about the like you said, the propulsive plot, and also the stakes, right? I think for the
Yeah.
character, and particularly like we'll talk about Luke. I mean, for the
Mm.
character of Luke, like it's his ass on the line, right? I mean, they
Mm.
are, and as you said, Gus wants him to find his dad and this, his dad's best friend, and find that
Mm.
money, and Gus is not going to take no for an answer, um
Mm.
and then, yeah, as you said, so I guess I'm wondering how much, when you started out, how did you do? did you, sounds like you've written some books that you didn't finish. So what made this one, like, how did this one happen all the way, kind of?
Yeah, so during so it started probably around sort of 2020, 2021. So we, like everyone in the world, we had a COVID pandemic.
I
And I
remember.
was working in a respiratory service at that point. So we basically all ended up working in a respiratory service because everybody was sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got quite significantly burnt out. Like I really, it was a very, very difficult time. And I ended up taking a bit of time off from work.
Yeah.
And I thought, what am I going to do with myself, just to recover a little bit from this and recognizing that I needed some space from treating patients.
Yeah.
And I did a writing course. I did a short course at the time, and it was so much fun. And it was only like a 6 week course or something, but it was lots of little exercises and things. And I thought, I can do this. This is fun. And so I enrolled in a longer it's called a professional writing and editing course. And so I did
Okay.
that. And one of the assessment tasks that I had to do for that was a character study. And the character study that I produced for that assessment was Luke. And it was
Interesting.
basically, the idea of someone who on the surface looked completely normal.
Right.
But then when you scratch that surface a little bit, you realize there's just so much more going on.
Right.
Um, and that really started from, a conversation that I had had with a patient once where, she was telling me about her partner, who was quite a high profile person, occasionally turned up in the 6 o'clock news, that kind of level of high
Mhm.
profile. But then she was telling me some of the madness that went on in their house
Yeah.
and some of he had some paranoia, some fixed paranoid delusions,
Yeah.
and he controlled the family in this way that was quite unhealthy. And, but then on the surface, we're talking about a very well presented woman in, twin set and pearls and, two
Right.
kids in private school. And,
Right.
so it was really, really interesting. So obviously, you can't write exactly that.
Right. Right.
So, but I thought that idea of that, that you have that everybody's hiding stuff, right? Everybody's
Yes. Right.
stuff they want to
Right.
keep to themselves.
Right. And it
Yeah.
is really, I mean, so Luke grows up with his mother until she dies, and then he's shipped off to live with his dad, and his dad is not very stable in and out of jail, and and it is, I mean, you do sort of, it is sort of, it's a story as old as time, right? I mean, the child is like, and then you just learn, what I love about him is that he's doing all the right things, right? I mean, he really is. He's going to school, he meditates, he works out, like he's really trying his very hardest to to reach the point where he can have a normal life, and it's just that the chips keep falling against him, which is super fun.
Yep.
And then Emma, who in some ways like is she's going to be the least likely person to help him find this calm lifestyle that he,
Yeah.
supposedly wants. So, then did you dream? I mean, did you imagine that? How did you put the characters together? You obviously had Luke. Luke was sort of your primary character study, and then, you know, did you just sit down and sort of write, or did you
Yeah.
plan it out, or, you know?
So zero planning.
I'm on the zero planning committee
Zero
too.
planning. So, so I am definitely most of the first draft was written without any attention to any of that theory about structure or plot or, so it was just a story, right? So you
Yeah,
just start writing and, here's Luke and here's what he's doing and here's all this bad stuff that's going to happen to him. Yay,
yeah,
and I think and for people who are starting out in writing, I think all the advice around plotting and stuff, I think it's second draft advice, right? Like I think
yeah,
sometimes you write a draft and then you go back and you kind of think, well, how am I going to actually make this work as a kind of a satisfying story that has a satisfying beginning, middle, and end, and things happening at satisfying moments.
yeah,
Um, the characters are really interesting, and I originally had a different, I suppose, another female character
yeah.
who was probably a lot more like Luke,
Uh-huh.
and I realized that actually it was just a bit too easy,
Yeah. Yeah, you
so
have so
Emma,
much good tension with he and Emma. Yeah.
yeah, because
Especially
Emma.
considering her dad and her brother. It's all very beautifully wound together. He didn't just get involved with Emma, right?
Oh
He's
no,
very much involved with everybody.
pulled into the whole family, isn't he?
Yes.
And and Emma's this character. So Emma, as a character, did come to me very fully formed because she's like so many young women that I met when I first started medical school. So I grew up in the country, not particularly wealthy, so lower end of middle class, I would say. My dad didn't finish high school. My mum went back and finished a science degree while I was a teenager. So
Yes. Yes.
so where I'd come from, no one's a doctor, no one does that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I started medical school as this, again, oh, like, it was better than engineering, but still, 70% of the people in a medical degree come from private school education. A
Yeah.
lot of
Right.
parents who are doctors, they've been told since they were 5 years old they have to be a doctor because dad is, that sort of
Right.
that sort of
Right.
thing. And Emma is like that. So she's very, very sheltered. She's,
Yes.
fully private schooled. She's very clever, but
Yes.
she's not someone who's had a lot of life experience beyond going to parties and trying cocaine. That's
Right. Right.
that's probably the extent of her experience. She certainly has probably never met the criminal underworld before.
Yes. Right. She handles
Yeah.
herself quite well, I have to say. I was
Yeah.
duly impressed.
I think so she's an actor
Yes.
and she one of the things she loves to do is action movies and to do her own stunts. So that's one of her selling points is as an actor is that she will do her own fight scenes and things like that. So she quite likes the idea of pretending to punch someone.
Right. Right. When it's reality, it's always a little different.
Correct. Yeah.
So right. So it's so quite a different thing when it's reality. But Emma, she does. She handles herself really beautifully. And I love the relationship she has with her brother, right? Who is is handicapped. So
Yeah, yeah. So Phil's got some disabilities. So he's living with some autism and some intellectual disability as well, and pretty significant anxiety. And I think
yeah,
that's one of the things that where Luke comes in because he's working as a disability worker, and he's learned how to handle anxiety.
right.
So he has that ability to calm the room.
Right. It's beautiful too to
Yeah.
see him with. I can see how. I mean, I can see how Emma felt for him. If I had watched, Luke with my brother, who had those, was the anxiety and the climbing on the roof. I mean, there's a lot of fabulous stuff that happens. You gotta. I'm not gonna spoil all the fun stuff. You have to go read the book.
Yeah.
But there is it. I can see absolutely. And then her dad is kind of so you can see why she wants to escape
Yeah.
her world.
Yeah.
So you wrote a draft of a book, and
Yeah.
I think it's good for we have a lot of I think aspiring authors who listen to
Mm.
the podcast. I think there's a lot of thought out there, belief maybe, that you can really write a book and have it be done in one draft. And I think it's important or even like mostly done, and then you kind of fine tune it. And so I think it's worthwhile to talk about sort of how that, a first draft really changes to a second draft to a third draft
Yeah.
and when it actually becomes a book. And so can you speak a little bit to sort of how you felt, like what when you saw sort of what you'd created initially, can you tell us kind of what pieces were there and then how you sort of wrapped your arms around the revision? Because that's really hard to do. And did you have help?
Oh, absolutely. And you can't write a book by yourself, right? Like I think, and I know there's a lot of there's a lot of people who are, sort of self-publishing and not having editors
Yeah.
and doing that. And I think it's just you're going to get a better book if you engage
Oh,
other minds on it. Um so I had what I thought was a good draft. And I had a friend from one of my writing courses who read it through and made lots of suggestions.
yeah.
And then I had an editor go over it who made also some suggestions. And it was actually the editor who suggested having some point of view from Emma. So
Oh, okay.
originally it was all Luke's point of view. So
Yeah.
quite close third person from Luke.
Yeah.
And the editor had suggested that that was perhaps a little bit claustrophobic and that it would be good to get somebody else's version of Luke.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah. It's
obviously when
so
you're in that close,
helpful.
Yeah,
right.
and that close third person, you can't describe yourself, can you?
No, no.
And if you do, it's
I've seen
silly.
people try, but it's a little
Yeah.
awkward, and yeah,
I stroked my luscious long blonde hair.
yes,
Like,
exactly,
come
exactly.
on.
So yeah, and
Um,
I agree with you. I think, and that is it's a really actually incredible trick, and probably most people are, have heard that. But using point of view, even just if you have two points of view, really using the other point of view to, to reflect the main character is so
yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so once I thought that I had it finished and I started, submitting to agents and I was lucky. I got an agent who was really,
Yes.
really really happy with it, like really enjoyed it. Some people just really connect with what you've written
Yes,
and
I know. I
with you.
love that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the dream,
Um,
right? The dream is to find somebody who, loves the story.
yeah, and so we did. So I did another revision with him before
Yeah.
it went out to publishers on submission, and then once I had the publishing contract, then I did a structural edit with an editor, and then a copy edit, and then the proofread. So
So,
so there's layers and layers of
yes.
editing that goes into it.
So now I know I actually know your U.S. editor, Joe Brosnan,
Oh yeah,
is a
yeah,
friend of mine. This is he's wonderful. So I'm curious because I've never simultaneously published in two English speaking. My new book
yeah,
will be out in the UK, but I'm not. Doesn't sound like I'm going to go through an editorial process with them.
yeah,
So did
yeah.
you go through one with in Australia, and then Joe just took it as it was, or how did that work?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly that. So we did all of the editing here in Australia and then it went to Joe and at that point I think he was thinking maybe he would do some more, but he was happy with it where
Oh,
it was.
good. Okay.
Yeah, so didn't do any more editing from there. I was kind of glad because I was
Yeah.
hoping I wouldn't have to do any more structural change. I was
Right.
just having that moment of, oh my God, if I have to change.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
did you sell the version that we've seen now to Joe, or was there a version that, and then you edited it with your Australian editor and Joe got that version? I'm always curious about that. Does that make sense?
Um, so the Australian and the US version will be they're the same.
They'll be the same, but when
They'll be the
Joe
same.
bought it, when the
Yeah.
US editor bought it, did it look like it
Yeah.
already does, or you had yet to do the
I'd
edit?
get to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's so
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
I imagine when you did the edit, yeah, you hit on the things that Joe would have seen too,
Oh,
because
probably. Yeah. Because I think sometimes they're things that when you're the author, it's just too close to you,
yeah,
You can't see your own
yes.
forest and
Still,
trees.
yeah, I'm 17 books. I'm still like, oh, I didn't even think about that.
Oh,
Like,
of course.
you're just
Yeah.
like, what? How do I not think of that? So, well, that's so exciting. So tell us, now that you've done it and you've published your first one,
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the cruelest thing almost to ask an author, but it's like, what's next?
What's
Are you working
next?
on something?
Yes, so well, I've submitted another manuscript to the Australian publishers. It's not ready, like it really does. So because it was a bit of a quicker turnaround, I'm absolutely sure we're going to need to do, at least yeah, a gazillion structural edits. I know there's stuff that needs fixing. It's funny because with your first book, the saying is it takes you your whole life to write your first book, and then suddenly you want to write another one in a year.
I know. I
So
know. It's
that's what
really
happened.
not very realistic, is it?
No, no. So I have written another one, and I've started working on a third. So I've got another one that and it's they talk about how you cheat on your manuscripts with other manuscripts. So
That's so fun. I haven't heard that. Tell me what you mean.
so so if you have one that you should be working on, and then you
Oh,
have an idea, and then you go off and you start working on something else that's like a sneaky side project, it's like
I wish that
it's cheating.
I only have one. I'm like a manuscript monogamy. I only have
Yeah.
one idea at a time. So I'm always, my biggest fear is that I'll get to the end and not have another idea. So far it hasn't happened, so I'm going to knock on some wood. But
Hmm.
that's always yeah, I'm not somebody who has a bunch of ideas.
So you're not unfaithful to your
I'm
manuscript.
not, I guess.
I
There you go.
am.
We can spin it. I would love to be unfaithful to my manuscript. I'd love to have other ideas because I think it's great when an idea can kind of grow and percolate. And also, I love the idea of going back and forth I've done it with, I've had projects I worked on with other writers. So I've done that, but not
Yeah, yeah.
projects on my own.
I think it does help to keep things fresh to a certain degree because I think you definitely need to put space between yourself and your writing at
Yeah.
times. And I think when you're working on a deadline, like I missed my deadline for the second book. It was due at the end of June, and at that point I had to say, look, I just need another couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
And
pretty standard. I think that happens.
and then what you're doing then is you're writing, a couple of chapters, and then you just don't have time to let them sit before you
Yeah.
come back and review. And you do need to let it sit, and you need to come
Yeah.
back to it fresh, at least a couple of days,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
between. When you're on a deadline, it's
Yeah.
quite like I wrote that yesterday. I'll just read it through. There's no typos. Done. It's
Yeah,
just
right.
not
It
ideal.
is really hard. I know. And it's just, I think there's the time, there's the time it takes to write, but there's also the time it takes for the story to sort of form. And I think that
Mm.
for me, that's a lot longer than the time it takes to write. The writing part of it, once I know what I'm doing, is can be pretty quick, but the figuring things out part is can be pretty slow. So
Yeah,
yours
yeah,
goes
I think
probably
so
really
too.
fast.
And realizing as well that, I mean, I don't know how you write, but I find so I do try to have a bit of a plan, and I'll try to have an outline in my head of
Yeah.
certain points that I want to hit and stuff like that. But characters just do things, right? And
Oh,
then
right.
you're in the middle of a scene and you realize, no, he wouldn't do that. That's not what he would do. Like I'm
Right.
trying to get to a certain point, and I think, no, he wouldn't do that. He would be really angry about that, and he'd go off and do something else instead.
Right.
And then you realize that you've got another little side quest that
Right.
needs to
Right.
be explored,
Yeah,
and
which
maybe
is
that side
fun. I mean,
quest
I
is
think
the full
it's
quest.
fun to go with that, right? I mean, I think it's fun to go with that. And now hold on. So this book comes out, when does it come out in Australia? Because in the US it's out August 12th.
August 12th. Yeah, so in Australia it's July 29.
Okay, so you're a little ahead of us. But today, actually, we are airing today on August 12th, and that is actually your pub date for the US. So
Oh, fantastic.
congratulations. As people are listening to this, it is out there in the world. Tell our listeners where, to find you, your website, are you on socials? Where are the places?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm just Tanya Scott author, Tanya with a Y, Tanya Scott author, and my website is tanyascott.au, and that is probably about it. And I believe that Stillwater will be available across all bookstores. So,
Oh
and
yeah, well, and I really do. I love I'm a big fan of Grove Atlantic and what they do, and the cover is beautiful. This is such a fun read. It kind of has it's like a little bit of it's like a little bit of a little Wild Westy element that I love. He's a little like he's got a little Jack Reacher that I don't know if people have said that to you. He's just got that like he gets pushed to the point where he's like enough is enough, and then
that
he's
is
also
enough.
got
Yeah,
this really sort of soft side. I think I was actually wondering if there was going to be another Luke book.
maybe,
Okay. But that's fair.
maybe.
I mean, that's fair.
It,
I would
yeah.
read more about him. I really enjoyed him as a character. So,
You think he
I
needs more challenges, does he? Does he need to be put through more
probably,
hardship?
I mean, probably not. He probably is happy to be done, but for readers, we might be like, let's see some more of that. Well, I'm really excited for the next one, and I won't ask too many questions because it sounds like you're going to go through some revisions and all that fun stuff, and we will hopefully see that coming out with free from you next year. Everybody, a copy of Stillwater will be available for our giveaway on Killer Women. So follow us on Instagram at Killer Women Podcast and on Facebook at Danielle's Killer Women and the Killer Women Facebook group as well. So, Tanya, it was so fun to get a chance to talk to you. She got up, it's like 18 hours ahead of me, maybe more even,
Oh, something like that. Yeah,
something
it's
like
it's
that.
not that
So,
early. It's just the morning. It's
it's
fine.
very, yeah, okay, that's true. It's a very respectable hour. We didn't make you
Yeah,
get up at 6 a.m.
no.
I'm glad we didn't. So, everyone, this was Killer Women today with Tanya Scott. I'm Danielle, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.